Thank you all for attending today's rendition of the Career Discovery Series. This event is sponsored by the Colgate Professional Networks and Career Services as an introduction to careers in the arts. The professional networks were created to provide opportunities for alumni and parents to connect and network with one another, and also to engage with students who are interested in pursuing their related careers, so hence this event. So throughout the series this summer, we highlighted many different industries. And so our plan for today is to spend about 30 minutes talking with the alumni and then use the remaining 15 minutes or so for Q&A. So if you would prefer to submit questions in the chat, you're welcome to do so, and Jamil's gonna kind of monitor that. If you would rather wait until the end, you're welcome to do that as well. So Jamil, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks again, y'all. And I'm not sure if you all are putting things in the chat. It's not coming up on my end yet. So
I don't see it either, actually. And I wonder if I did something wrong here.
It's all good. It's all good. I think, you know, we'll still be able to have that conversation still. Thank you all. Hey, thank you all very much for joining me on the summer day. Some of you all look like you're in some really beautiful locations. Julie, I feel very jealous of your background. But my name is Jamil Jude. I graduated Colgate in 2009. While there, I was an English literature major with a chemistry minor. Now I am the artistic director of a theater company in Atlanta called True Colors Theater Company. I've kind of held several different positions over the 12 years or so in my career, but I'm really, really excited to get back to Colgate. The Career Services Department changed my life while I was there, so I'm always happy to get back. I'm really excited to be joined by two other alums, Brian Hinrichs and Carter Cooper. And I'm going to go ahead and just start with Carter. Carter, you just tell us, you know, I said your name, but you can just reiterate it. Repetition is key. Your class year, and then what you're doing currently.
Sure. Thanks, Jamil. Hi, everybody. My name is Carter Cooper. I'm the class of 2013. I was an art history and political science double major at Colgate, and I run a corporate art consulting firm in New York. So we help corporate clients build art collections for their offices. We also work with hospitality clients, so hotels and residential, you know, apartment buildings and condo buildings, and occasionally private residences.
Great, thank you, Carter. I'm happy you said that last point. I will be getting in contact with you about my own art collection. Brian,
sounds good.
Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Hinrichs. I graduated in 2007. I was an English literature and music double major at Colgate. And yes, career services is awesome. After my senior year, I had a Fulbright scholarship in large part to my work with the career services on that application, which was amazing. I am now the executive director of the Bangor Symphony Orchestra in Central Maine. And we are about a $1 million budget regional orchestra, and we present about 6 classical concerts a year, the Nutcracker, Pops concerts, outdoor concerts, and a whole host of educational programs in the community.
All right, y'all. So you have some arts administrators here. I hope that's what you signed up for. If not, it's only 30 minutes of your life, okay? Carter, I am going to ask you to kick us off. You know, what was it at Colgate that really just, like, as you look back, lit the spark that eventually led you to the position that you're in?
Sure. I was really fortunate at Colgate. I knew I wanted to be a political science major, and I started taking those classes immediately, but I kind of accidentally took an art history class and then automatically fell in love with the field. I was like, everything that we were doing there was what I was good at and how I learned visually. So I was really fortunate to take that class and fall into that. The art history department really sort of pointed students towards careers in academia or potentially museums, but I was fortunate to take a spring break trip with the career services department to New York, led by a couple of alumni, and it was just a whirlwind trip. We went to, you know, 3 different arts institutions every single day for a week. There was, you know, a media firm, a dance company. Those were 2 places I actually got internships to from that trip. We got to see sort of any and every opportunity you could have in New York in the arts during that week. So it was really important to my understanding of where I might fit in the arts later after Colgate. And then when I was a senior and I was in my summer in between senior year and starting working, I got a job through one of the Colgate, it's called Navigate at the time, like job placement networks, that an alumni had posted a job there, and I started working at a corporate art consulting firm up in New England. So it was through Colgate that I got the job as well. So very fortunate through career services to get connected that way.
If we needed more advertisement for why a
Yeah.
Colgate degree or education is of value to you all, look at the three of us can say we owe our careers in no small part to Colgate. Brian, that same question to you. Was there a class, was there a moment, was there an experience at Colgate that really lit the fire to you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Carter, again, I came into Colgate knowing I wanted to be an English major, not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do beyond that. But I had grown up playing the cello pretty seriously and continued it at Colgate as what I thought was a hobby, but then I became a music major. And it was really through my experience with the chamber players. Anybody in Colgate chamber players? Hey, awesome. I'm still in touch with Laura all the time. And she was at the time, Laura Kluger, as a chamber music professor, was running a music festival in Hamilton, and she created an internship program over the summer. So really it was that pathway to really just understanding that what you did behind the scenes. You know, I knew I loved the art form as a performer, but really it was just a discovery of the fact that, oh, hey, there are jobs off stage, because it was pretty clear I wasn't going to make my living as a professional cellist at that point. So that's really what I would point to, that experience in chamber players, interning at the Shenango Summer Music Fest. But as Carter mentioned as well, it really was cumulative. It was what I was learning in the classroom and really just feeling like, okay, this is my passion. You know, I love this music. I want to sort of spread that joy that this music brings me to as many other people as possible. And what's the best way for me to come at that? And yeah, there were a few other internships through some other chamber music alums that I was able to connect with that sort of paved the way on that front as well.
Great, thanks, Brian. My story is not too dissimilar, again, as a theme. I went to college with dead set on being an orthopedic surgeon. I knew I was going to go and I was going to major in Spanish because it was a love and interest of mine. And I was going to minor in biology and really just like go the pre-med track. I played football. I was a athlete for the first 3 years of my time there, and just did not have the time to do all of the requirements of the Spanish major, unfortunately. I ultimately still left with a degree in a language and a degree in a science. They just weren't the ones that I intended on. But while there, I really started to explore how we use art as a means to talk about the world around us. I kind of stumbled into the theater department through my English major and started writing and directing plays through a small school group that I believe is no longer there, called the Urban Theater, and really just started to advocate for stories, especially stories from underrepresented communities. And that eventually led me to a career path. And that's where I want to direct this question to you, Carter. So yes, we have those experiences at Colgate. We get set up with those early internships, but the first internship does not necessarily make a career. There are other steps that we have to go through once we get that initial experience. Can you just talk a little bit about your journey after that first internship to now being the co-founder of your own organization?
Sure. I feel like the internships for me functioned more like crossing things off of a list than sort of gaining cumulative experience. I sort of left all of them saying, okay, I tried it and I don't want to do that now. And that's okay. And it was really helpful to try working at different types of organizations and figure out what I'm really good at and what I care about and what I want to do. So I started working at a corporate art consultancy in New England, and just sort of volunteered for everything and got put in a position where I had a lot of responsibility and a lot of influence. And I got to see every single aspect of the business, from operations of our manufacturing facility to forecasting sales to running an art gallery. And I just sort of touched every part of the business. And I was there for 4 years, and it was a wonderful educational experience. And our firm grew a lot while I was there. We doubled in size for staff, and we, I think, quadrupled in revenue. So then when 3 years ago, I needed to move down to New York because my then boyfriend, now fiance, who I met at Colgate, was living down there, and we were doing long distance. So I moved down with him. And at the same time, one of the salespeople who was working at that firm moved down as well. So we said, hey, let's replicate what we were doing up there down here and make it our own. And we've been doing that for the past 3 years. So definitely picked up a lot of tools at the old firm and then modified them to work down here in sort of a slightly different model. But then I also, at the same time, enrolled in business school to keep putting tools in my tool belt as we're starting this company.
I love what you're saying there, Carter, that the career trajectory involves a lot of trying on things, see if they fit, removing what doesn't, keeping what does, and continue to innovate. Brian, do you have a similar career story where you tried on a couple of things to see if it worked and then kept what didn't and discarded what didn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think right when I was graduating, I was sort of unsure whether I was going to go the route into academia or go, which for me would have been like musicology and music history, or whether I was going to go in the arts admin route. I sort of felt good about both options. I don't want to put too much weight on internships, but I had an internship at the Glimmerglass Festival, which is also in upstate New York in Cooperstown. There are a few major summer festivals that run really, really well-run internship programs. And by well-run, I mean they treat their interns well, they pay them well, they really give you good experience and exposure to how things run rather than just tucking you in a corner somewhere filing. So like Carter, I mean, I was able to absorb everything going on around me. And then, so that was a huge turning point and something that really got me my first job, which was out in Madison, Wisconsin. And I was the director of marketing and community engagement for an opera company there. So sort of a direct build on that internship. And again, that was sort of a smaller company, but I could see how everything was done, and it sort of secured my interest in the field and secured my feeling that it also began to plant the seed that maybe I didn't want to be so specialized within an organization. It sort of made me feel like, hey, I kind of want to be that guy who's leading the meeting and leading the conversations about strategy and big picture directions for organizations. I did, and to sort of get me to that place of being comfortable in that role, I did go back to graduate school. I went to the Boll Center for Arts Administration, which is an MBA program built into the Wisconsin School of Business, focused on nonprofit arts administration. I highly recommend the program. They do want you to have at least 4 years of real world experience before you apply. So that was also helpful to sort of not jump the gun on returning to grad school to get some real world experience because of that idea of sort of getting a sense of what you want to do. But getting the MBA helped me feel confident and then putting myself on the market for jobs that were in the executive director position, which is more a management role where I have my hand in a little bit of everything. I sort of found myself at the point in my career where I was like, okay, do I want to have a smaller role, more specialized role at a place like the New York Philharmonic or something like that? Or do I want to try and go to perhaps a smaller ship, but one that's easier to steer and that I could take on a leadership role? So that's the route I went. And with my background, I think at Colgate, you build up this sort of broad education and this array of experiences that really has lent itself to looking at the big picture at an organization.
Great, thank you. And Brian, that the school at UW, man, it's such a highly respected school, so you might be underselling it a little bit, but it's a a program that a lot of great arts administrators are coming from. Brian, I want to stick with you a little bit. You talked about a desire not to have to specialize or stay in one part of an organization departmentally, but now having an opportunity to influence and affect so many different areas. Can you just talk about what does a day look like for you as executive director of Bangor?
Sure. So it's a lot. We are a small shop, but we get a lot of big things done, which is exciting. And again, one of the great, really appealing things about a job like this, and I recommend people to at least consider the idea of perhaps going to a smaller city for exactly those reasons of the opportunity to play a bigger role potentially within an organization or a community. But my day is different every day. I mean, I do have a 9-to-5 component. When I'm in the office, I'm working on our marketing, I'm working on our fundraising, I'm working on things like related to programming and contracting artists and lining up what we have coming up in a season. So really on the artistic front, I'm really working very closely with and deferring to our artistic director, our conductor. But I love those conversations and that part of my job because I stay connected to my roots as a cello player and somebody who loves the art form and the musical side of this. So the 9-to-5 component is fairly straightforward. And then there's my role in production, on concert weekends. I'm sort of the face of the organization with our patrons in the concert hall. I'm sort of the lead contact on ensuring our guest artists have a great experience when we hire them and bring them to Bangor. And I'm in the rehearsal hall listening for balance, with the orchestra and taking notes for our conductor on occasion, or the soloist will say, can you hear me up in the balcony? It's a huge, huge mix of things. But again, that's why I ended up here and why I like this position, is because it is a little bit of everything. It's the big picture, thinking about which direction the business is going, but down to the nitty gritty of balance in the orchestra hall. So.
Great, thank you, Brian. Yeah, one of the things I love about my job as well is that I feel like everything that I know how to do, I do every day. Like there's not a day that goes by that I haven't used some skill that I've acquired over the time, and it can leave you exhausted at the end of the day, but it's definitely fulfilling. It's definitely, at least I have found it to be a lot more fulfilling than having to check parts of myself at my job and then hope that I can find those outlets in extracurriculars or something else outside of the work. Carter, I see you nodding your head. Can you talk a little bit about what your day-to-day is like as well?
Sure, yeah, I'll echo all of that. It's really familiar to me as well. And especially that last part, Jamil, about being able to get a lot of personal fulfillment about working in the arts, that, I'm looking at art every single day. I'm going to art fairs virtually. I'm going to studio visits and interacting with visual art, which I was always very interested in for my work life. It can be exhausting, but also immensely fulfilling. And echoing what Brian said as well, being able to wear a lot of hats can be really fun and makes every single day totally different. And should deal with budgets and production and getting art from point A to point B, but there's also a great deal of interaction and communication with creative people who have really interesting ideas, and communicating those to our clients is a really wonderful part of the job.
So clearly, because we are meeting via Zoom, the world has shifted in a way that it's been unrecognizable up into the history of people up until this point. Can we talk a little bit about just how this moment, yes, COVID, but there's a moment where we are having reckoning as far as the ways in which we talk about racial justice, the way we talk about gender dynamics and how that's being played out. Can you all talk about just how this moment has shifted or impacted the work you're doing? Carter, I'll start with you.
Sure. At a firm level, we had to experiment with working remotely and delivering projects remotely. So we weren't ready for that, but now we know how that works, for better or for worse. At an industry level for us, the you know, our industry follows construction timelines. It follows leasing. It follows, you know, companies' appetite to purchase artwork. So a lot of that is still to be determined, whether or not, you know, there still are budgets for artwork in corporate spaces, and whether spaces will look the same as they did before. I have confidence that they will, but I'm also hoping that there's been a trend in real estate and in architecture that corporate spaces are looking a little bit more like hospitality spaces, and the employee experience and the client experience is really sort of front and center, and that they're building out more conference centers and meeting rooms and entertainment spaces. So I'm hoping artwork can be featured in those spaces in the future. But we are getting asked for art programs that reflect diverse perspectives, and having that come from the client first instead of something that we sort of talk about in a larger conversation is really wonderful, and it's exciting for all of the artists that we work with.
That's great. Thank you, Carter. And Brian, you know, so much of your industry is about the live performance aspect of it. I imagine because we are in sister industries dealing with unions, and, you know, when is it going to be safe to bring performers back into the halls has affected a lot of what you do. But, you know, maybe high level, can you talk to us a little bit about how your life and your work has been impacted by this moment?
Yeah, Jamil, I'm sure we're going through similar conversations about what a theater looks like with a socially distanced audience, what is safe for performers, what do audiences want, pivoting to digital, you know, everybody is doing a lot of this. I mean, so the short answer is that we had to cancel the entire second half of our last season. We've delayed the opening of our new season until January 31st. Knowing full well that that could change, and that we're developing backup plans to the backup plans. But in the meantime, we have been able to do a lot online that we've wanted to do for a long time, but haven't had the time to really focus on. So it's really pushed us to go digital in a way that I wish we had been doing all along. So that's a practice that I'm happy that this has forced us to get comfortable with. By that, I mean, just making sure our community knows all our musicians, getting them recorded from home, doing mini performances, creating new educational videos that are relevant to the community, but also can be used by teachers around the country in the classroom. That's been a way to keep hiring musicians. That's been a way to keep engaged with our audiences as well. We are grappling with the larger questions that I think have really plagued classical music for a long time about just how white it is and just how non-diverse our orchestras are. And it's amplified in Maine, which is one of the least diverse states in the nation. So I'm leading board level conversations about what that looks like for us. I mean, I've always loved working with our music director, who is always looking to bring to the forefront composers' voices, both historical and living, that have not always been front and center. Our last two major commissions have been from composers of color that's just how it's been. It's always been something that we've done with our audience. So I think on that front, we can really point to some strong work. But in terms of an organization and the culture in classical music at large, there's definitely a reckoning right now. I recommend everybody check out, there's a huge section in the New York Times on this issue right now, and just how ingrained certain systems are in classical music that are going to be tough to dismantle, but we're having those conversations, certainly.
Yeah, you know, I was gonna mention that. I saw just the high level stuff about it, but even like the idea of the blind audition, right? And how its intention is to really decrease gender and racial discrimination based on just like how someone projects into the world, but not without that level of specificity and the inquiry of, well, how can we find those great artists? You know, we may be perpetuating a problem that changing our practices could allow us to change. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The question of a blind audition for those who don't know, and this is definitely veers into the jargon territory, so I'll try to keep it quick, but it means the idea that, you know, to earn a spot in an orchestra, you go through an audition process, but it is truly blind. You know, you're behind a curtain. The audition panel is made up of the conductor and musicians from the orchestra. They have no idea who's playing. It is strictly based. They have not seen your resume. They don't know where you come from. They don't know what you look like. There's carpet down so that if somebody comes in heels, they don't hear that. You have no idea who's behind that curtain, and it's based strictly on artistic merit, which did have the positive effect initially of immediately you saw orchestras that were, you know, 80, 90% men. Oh, wow, now that we're doing this blind, suddenly we're 50% female. Go figure. So that it had that really positive effect. But the point is now all musicians are almost, you know, if you're coming out of conservatory, you're created equal. You're so highly accomplished. You're so technically proficient. If we want orchestras to be more relevant in our communities, shouldn't we be interviewing musicians? Shouldn't we be getting to know them about what they want to do in the community? Shouldn't they reflect their community? So it is this double-edged sword, and we're having that conversation for sure.
Yeah, just the diversity of perspective, what that can do to just affecting not just the way the art is made on stage, but the effect that the art has in the community is awesome. Guys, I'm going to take us out and open this up for questions on this thing. I'll start with you, Carter. Knowing what you know now about your industry, taking into consideration even in this moment, what's something that you wish was available to you at Colgate or was available, and looking back, you would have taken more advantage of it now that may have been able to help you situate here in your career?
I think the access to the city might be something that I wish was a little bit more accessible. It was really a fundamental week that when we went down and had that sort of spring break trip down there. I think, like I said, a lot of the sort of art and art history department, sort of the professors were sort of pointing me all towards going to graduate school for an art history master's degree, and I kind of knew that wasn't really going to happen. So I'm glad I got to experience lots of different arts organizations, but you know, my friends and I would drive down a couple of times and go to museums. But I think there is an opportunity to go to New York and really experience all that it has to offer in the arts. While at Colgate, it really isn't that far away, and if you can get there and sort of spend your weekends or a couple of weeks down there, I think that it is enormously helpful while you're trying to figure out what you really want to do.
Thank you for that. Brian, same question to you. What's something that you wish you would have taken more advantage of, or you wish was available to you?
Man, that's tough to say exactly. I mean, I guess one thing looking back that I would say is I don't think I had a great understanding, even though I was doing these internships and seeing, you know, that there were careers backstage and not just on stage. I don't think that I had a great understanding of, you know, arts administration as a business unto itself that could have further study and that could, you know, that could really, you know, that you could study and get better at. One thing, you know, as I'm talking, that really strikes me though, is the idea of working with boards and nonprofit boards, for example. That is such a huge part of my job, is working with our board of directors. So if this is, especially if you're thinking about a career in administration or anything in the nonprofit industry or arts industry, being aware of what nonprofit arts organizations there are locally in the Hamilton region and seeing if there's a way to get involved off campus, just to get your feet wet, understanding how a board of directors works, how a nonprofit works. I think there were probably opportunities that I didn't even think, you know, to breach the Colgate bubble on, you know, in locally in Hamilton and in, you know, upstate New York in particular.
Yeah, that Brian, that's such a great point. Having myself just pass the budget on Friday, and the work that it takes to work with those boards. Just quickly, you all, Brian has a MBA in arts administration, so maybe I'll let him explain a little bit more. But nonprofit management, the idea of organizations that receive a special tax designation from the government. While Brian is the executive director of an organization, he still reports to a board of directors that are held. They are responsible for the organization, right? That they're the ones who hold the public trust. Ultimately, they're the ones who, are in charge of making decisions. While Brian actually does run the day-to-day, he does report back to the board. So just in case anybody was unfamiliar with what a nonprofit structure is, there's a really layman term ideology of it. Brian, do you want to give any more context for what nonprofit?
Yeah, that was, you said it perfectly. I'm hired by the board of directors. I report to the board of directors, and these are volunteers, in a community who are have a seat at the table because of their support of the organization, or their passion for the organization, or their expertise in areas that the office staff doesn't cover.
And Carter, I'm correct in saying that you are not a nonprofit organization, right? You're
correct.
Yeah. So I think we're saying that we were having some challenges with the chat, but I would just love if you guys want to use the raise hand feature or anything like that. Feel free to ask questions, but I would love if there are no immediate questions for us just to hear a little bit about what your area of study is or something like that, just for context. So let's start with questions. If not, then I'll ask those specific questions. And so hard to hear when you guys all talk at the same time. So maybe just one at a time. Okay, great.
I have a question. Can you all hear me all right?
Okay. You're really quiet.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Sorry, this mic can be a little tricky. Hi, I'm Ariel. I am a junior, and I was wondering, I guess particularly in nonprofits, that's something I'm interested in, but for all of you, how do you deal with situations where you have some conflicting interests? For example, maybe the board wants to go one direction, but you're not sure that's the best direction for the community, or there's some sort of instance where you have to reconcile those sorts of things. I imagine that might come up somewhat frequently. How do you handle those types of situations?
Brian, I'll let you answer that question just in case one of my board members are secretly listening to this conversation.
Man, that is such a pointed question. It's a real thing. I mean, it's really a fine line. And I think, again, if you're leading an organization, you need to be a diplomatic person. You need to be open to diverse perspectives. It is some of the tension that you might be pointing to is, and Jamil, I'm sure knows this well as well. We're the day-to-day, we're the experts in this field, but the board does bring that community perspective, and I need to sometimes accept that I may have my head in the sand on something because I'm too close to it. So I like to think with the board, what am I missing? I take for granted that people in my community know that they have a symphony and that they should come, but no, of course, not everybody is aware of this at all times and thinking about it at all times. But in terms of, specifically, navigating those conflicts is just part and parcel with the job, and many nonprofit jobs. Both in an office environment, in a board environment, it's about, I think, listening and making sure that all voices feel heard. I think that's a really important component of any sort of conflict resolution. But one thing that I've really found useful is the idea of, developing a strategic plan that gets insight from your artists, from your community, from your board, but really beyond the organizational walls, and sticking to it, making sure it's adaptable and flexible, but mapping out long-term plans, and in particular, sort of a guiding vision for the organization, so that once you do have conflicts arise, you can sort of go back and say, I see what you're saying, but we did all this research and this work to develop this vision for the organization that really points us in this direction for a reason, and so hopefully once you have something like a strategic plan or a vision statement worked out, that you have gone through those efforts already to smooth out some of those inherent tensions. But yeah, conflicts arise, different perspectives arise, and particularly right now, I mean, with, you know, what an orchestra or what any organization that's depends on live events, what do you do right now? What is the best thing to do? Everybody has an opinion, and everybody is sending you a link to what the latest thing is, and everybody, it's really tough to navigate. But again, I think so much of it is about being a real listener and taking it all in, and again, hopefully bringing it back to some sort of core organizational direction that you've already agreed on.
Yeah, I want to follow up on what Brian said, because I think he's really capturing it in that strategic plan, or the vision of the organization. And I would just add that the values of an organization, which can be discussed in the strategic plan, I think is really what we have to go back to when we talk about budgeting. And again, not to try to get too far into the weeds, but in any budget, whether it's your own personal budgets on what you're going to spend money on, or at a university level or whatever, but a budget is a statement of your values. We are attaching what we believe in to what we believe we're going to spend money on. And I'll say it the other way, what we don't spend money on may also say what we believe in as well. So I have found that when working with the boards, I really want to go back to what are our shared values? What do we say when we come to the table that we all believe in, that we all say that before we abandon anything, before we will abandon everything else, before we abandon these core values, and then making sure that those things are represented in our budget. And if and when they are not, those having those discussion points. The last incendiary thing I may say is that the time board service is a volunteer thing, and maybe there are other things people want to volunteer for, right? Like, it is not you are not an essential worker when you are a board member at times. And it may be of value to divert your interests into other areas if the values of the organization writ large are not shared by specific board members. But hopefully you won't get there, because you'll be so diplomatic. You'll have a great vision and strategic plan, and everybody will agree with the values. So you'll never have to politely ask somebody to spend their time doing something else. But I have. Carter, you know, you're balancing a relationship with a co-founder. Can you talk a little bit about just how you guys navigate conflict, or even if it's with a client?
Sure, and I appreciate your candidness. I think that's what people need to hear about what it's really like to be in these kind of situations. But yeah, we follow the exact same protocol. When we start working with a new client, we carve out a criteria and a vision for the art program. And art can be, you know, squishy and murky, and like, why are we buying this? And why is this important? It's really sometimes hard to attach a numerical value to it. So every single art collection that we start with, and oftentimes we have committees of people from an organization selecting the artwork. Sometimes it's partners that are, you know, putting a real estate project together, and they're not from the same organization. They have different values, and they're coming at it from different perspectives. As we say, this is the why of the art program. This is what's important to this project, whether it's a building or an office space, and every piece we're going to collect is going to, you know, hit that framework in some way. Not every piece is going to match every single criteria of the collection. Some will do it better than others, but it's the same in my industry as it is, I think, for years, is being diplomatic and bringing people back to the vision that everyone agreed on and started with at the beginning.
Thank you. Was there another question from anyone?
Yeah, I've got one that's geared a little more towards Carter, I think. But the commercial art industry is like really notoriously competitive and difficult to get into. So what do you think was the hardest part of, you know, breaking into it, making your own firm? And what do you think was your biggest asset in achieving that and making something for yourself?
Sure, you're absolutely right. I think the biggest assets have been, one, the relationships that my partner and I have built from starting working in this industry a while ago. That really is sort of everything. In corporate art is, are you trusted? Have you delivered before? But then also we're really highly specialized in what we do is very niche. We don't take on every project that we're offered, because if you really want to work with us and we want to work with you, and it's a great match because everyone's really devoted to doing all of that due diligence that I just sort of talked about, and figuring out why an art collection is important for you, and why it's worth investing in, and who it really is for, and spending the money to make it beautiful and relevant and worthwhile, then it's a good match. And there are art advisors that, just put art on the walls and it looks nice and it's really cheap. And then there are art advisors who are selling $1 million paintings that the goal is to flip them later at some point. So being really specialized in what we do to find great client matches, and then making sure those relationships are really strong and continue to be strong by doing a good job at what we do has been, I think, the most important.
I'm wishing you best of luck in all those pursuits. Like, we've all said that, like, career services and those internships, those opportunities, right? Like, try it all. I often tell people, especially at this part of their careers, say yes to learn. Just like say yes to all of the stuff. Like, just do it all and figure out what it is. And this was the great time to do it, when everything is like at our fingertips, literally are at our fingertips. We can try it all. And at the very least, you'll know that you don't want to do that. There will be a time in your careers where saying no is helpful. I don't do a good job of saying no. I wish I said no more, so I could focus more on the things that I really need to do. But right now, I just encourage all of you all just to try to say yes to those opportunities and figure it all out. Carter or Brian, do you all want to say anything to take us home? And I know we're going to give some time to David at the end.
Yeah, I echo everything you said. Good luck to everybody. Certainly, I think through Chelsea or through the Colgate alumni portal, you can find us all. And in particular, the music majors in the bunch, I'm happy to stay in touch or put you in touch with other alums. So I know I was thinking of a few connections with what a few of you said. So I'm happy to help.
Likewise, I didn't even know my industry existed until it showed up on Navigate. So there's so much to discover through career services and everything. And if you have any more specific questions, I'm definitely happy to answer them. But good luck with everything.
Yes, thanks very much for allowing me to facilitate, and I hand it over back to Chelsea or David.
Thank you so much. David, do you want to introduce yourself quick?
Sure. I'm David Lovelace. I'm the Associate Director at Career Services, so I work with the advising team. Just before I sign off here, I want to thank Jamil and Brian and Carter. That was terrific. Thank you all so much for taking some time today to talk to us about your experiences and how Colgate helped shape that. For the students that are on the call, I just want to let you know that next steps are starting to engage with our office a little bit. I assure you, I did not ask the three of our presenters to plug Career Services like they did. I'm very grateful that they did. But with that being the case, I would love to work with you folks. And we have a full advising staff, and we all have sort of industry liaison areas. One of mine happens to be arts, creativity, and communication. So I would have a lot of overlap with you folks in your interest areas. I also picked up that a couple of you have already picked your lane, but a couple of you still have a lot of question marks. You have no idea what might be out there for you. I'm here to tell you that I want to work with both of you. So with that being the case, as you start thinking about next steps, Chelsea's going to talk about the Colgate link and how you can engage with the three panelists here or other alumni for that matter. But I would also invite you to circle back with our office, myself, or one of the other advisors as well. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yes, so thank you to Jamil and Carter and Brian. And I realized I didn't even introduce myself, but my name is Chelsea Lehman and I work in career services as well. And I work with our alumni volunteers, so putting on programs such as this one. So David mentioned the Colgate link. So that's gonna be the way we ask you all to connect back with Brian and Jamil and Carter. So this is a virtual platform just for Colgate alumni and students to connect on these very questions. So we have opportunities to get into a workshop to gain access to that program. You can find the schedule for linking to your network right on Handshake, or you can make an appointment and have kind of the conversation about networking strategy and how to use the platform. And I would encourage you to do that, to reach out to these three lovely people, and also to search for more people who are in these industries or have identities that you might connect with. So I think that's all I have for today, and I really appreciate you all coming. I will be sending the recording of this back out to everyone once I get it back, so you can have it to review again if you'd like, and we'll also send instructions on the Colgate link again. But thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.